This is Part 2 Episode 161. Right now, the spectating powerhouses were all in complete shock. Even Li Zhangji, whose elemental comprehension was exceedingly high, also had difficulty to understand just what happened in the previous clash of power between Haochen and Yang Haoyu. Perhaps only the legendary Chen Zidian had some clues of what happened, his face right now seeming full of appreciation. Yang Haoyu did not keep launching attacks, but looked at Long Haochen with a questioning look. Just how did you manage that? With your current cultivation and domain comprehension, there should be no way you could resist in front of my star domain. It looked as though the two of them kept making moves, but in reality, it was entirely a contest between their two domains. Yang Haoyu's attack was through his domain, whereas Long Haochen's first block used the divine snail shield, while the second one used entirely the power of his domain, the same going as well for the small blade projection he had launched afterwards. And in this clash of domains, it was Yang Haoyu who finally took the first step back. Although no winner emerged, Yang Haoyu had visibly suffered a slight loss. Long Haochen had a slight smile. Senior's star domain really expanded this junior's horizons. That's really the most powerful domain I have ever encountered, indeed unaffected by the restrictions of the light god's laws. But you forgot something. Starlight is light as well, and even if the star's power accumulated inside was even more massive, its core contains a large amount of light. Just like your ability uses light as its core, my light god domain harmonizes very well with all light. So I just made use of the light inside your domain to transform my power into a state able to contend with your domain, to barely resist. In some sense, I have partly been making use of your own power to contend against you. Yang Haoyu displayed a look of surprise, slowly nodding. What a strong light god domain. In terms of quality, it looks that your domain is really miles above my star domain. When the time comes and it gets strengthened enough, the Demon God Emperor's Black Hell will have met quite a match. But this match is just getting started. Your domain should have materialized quite recently, right? You will need to display far more to contend with my star domain. My star domain is not my power alone, but the power emerging from the fusion between my starry sky mythological beast and myself. Therefore, my domain is in essentially a mutated domain, equivalent to the fusion of two domains. My full power is close to the starry sky, but what you have been facing just before was merely the most fundamental power of the star domain. I am going to increase the pressure right now, take care. Yang Haoyu completely had the attitude of a senior giving guidance to a junior, and Long Haochen also had an increasingly deferential look on his face. Indeed, his cultivation had already increased to a considerable level, but the day he reached the 9th step was still quite recent, so he had far from enough experience of the abilities of a powerhouse of the 9th step as well as practical experience. Of course, he could easily respond to an opponent of lower cultivation than him, but an opponent stronger than him would be somewhat hard to cope with. If Yang Haoyu had used his strongest attack from the beginning, Long Haochen was afraid he'd be helpless in front of it. But him gradually increasing the level of pressure brought Long Haochen an extremely precious practical experience against domains, as well as extremely good benefits to his future cultivation due to the high level of pressure. Please guide me, senior. Long Haochen knocked lightly the aria of the Goddess of Light on his shoulder as a salute. Yang Haoyu returned the salute, raising the heavy sword in his right hand and holding it up in the air, declaring in a deep voice, I will start to display my own domain technique next, which I created using the abilities of my starry star mythological beast alongside my own, called Starry Sky Explosion. Take care, and show me how much light your light god domain can strip from mine under these circumstances. Saying that, Yang Haoyu pointed the heavy sword in his right hand at a star, and immediately, that star lit up fully, as the other starlights darkened. The star in question even grew a dim golden tail, rushing straight and brazenly toward Long Haochen. Starry Sky Explosion? This was the first time Long Haochen heard this name, but he knew about domain techniques. Yang Haoyu having already told him he was about to use a domain technique, how could Long Haochen respond without taking care? If this ability was added to the contest between domains, his own domain would surely lose. Although Long Haochen's domain was only obtained recently, he was absolutely unwilling to let his domain lose out, otherwise his future attitude in times of cultivation would surely get greatly affected. Drawing the aria of the Goddess of Light ahead, countless halos gathered onto the aria of the Goddess of Light as the multicolored gold light emitted by the divine unicorn glowed more and more intensely. Through the heart of eternity, Long Haochen managed to control his domain to some extent, but the light god domain was really a supreme existence among all extant domains. To achieve control over a domain of such a level surely would require an astronomical spiritual energy. Long Haochen obligatorily required the amplification of the divine unicorn to achieve complete control of the domain. Of course, as his understanding of the light god domain would deepen, this situation would change to some extent, until he would manage, upon completely integrating the light god domain, to fuse it into a part of his body, while also becoming part of the light god domain itself. That point could be called to achieve perfect control of his own domain, just what Yang Haoyu managed to do with his own domain. The gathered domain light revolved around the aria of the goddess of light, as a halo lit Long Haochen's body, and he pointed the aria of the goddess of light forward. Distributing the previously condensed halo ahead, it enveloped the incoming star. That star's flying speed increased continuously, and when it looked about to enter the light god domain, the halo guided by the aria of the goddess of light came to meet it, immediately stopping its advance. An unimaginable situation occurred. That slowed down star suddenly froze, expelling all the light in it, but without leaving Long Haochen's light god domain the slightest chance to absorb its light. That instant, that star suddenly blew up. Rumble. The violent explosion reverberated not only throughout the whole Alliance's great stadium, but even shook the whole holy city. The instant it was triggered, the barrier in the Alliance's great stadium shook severely, and large expanses of cracks formed on every corner of the barrier, looking close to shattering at any time. Right at this time, a solemn sound rang, as a golden ball suddenly appeared on top of the barrier, following with countless brilliant lights shrouding the barrier in the 7 colors of the rainbow then turned into 8 colors. This finally stabilized its state and stopped the barrier from shattering. Spiritual pellet. That golden ball was really Chen Zidian's spiritual pellet. He wouldn't easily display the use of his domain for fear of affecting the other people in the stadium, so he could only make use of his spiritual pellet to stabilize the defense of the stadium. Inside the stadium, Long Haochen and the divine unicorn immediately got expelled by the effects of that star's explosion. Floating in midair, Long Haochen let out a splurt of blood, his light god domain narrowly shattered in a violent shaking. This explosive force is really so terrifying. Is that the power of a domain technique? Long Haochen's internal spiritual energy totaled 290,000, adding to that the amplification from his golden foundation armor and the divine unicorn, his total available spiritual energy was already over 400,000. Although he hadn't reached the 4th rank of 9th step, the spiritual energy he could bring into play was no less. But, in front of these explosions, his 7 apertures felt as if sealed, causing the terrible feeling of having his senses stripped. Not only his body but even his soul experienced the large shaking. Was Starry Sky explosion such a terrible thing? The current Long Haochen was full of deep shock. Never did he expect Yang Haoyu's domain to actually reach such a terrible level of power. Because he was unfamiliar with the opponent, and because Yang Hao was also a powerhouse of the Night Temple, so far Long Haochen had maintained a probing attitude in this battle. This was also why he chose to take the first blow of the star domain with the divine snail shield instead of meeting it with his domain's power. And, right now, he got a true view of the terrible level of strength a domain ability could reach. The actual terror of a domain ability's destructive power was far above a forbidden spell. If the barrier specially prepared for defending Alliance's great stadium wasn't there earlier, they could be afraid a calamity would have befallen the whole holy city. However, Long Haochen was not discouraged so simply. Quite the opposite, something seemed to awaken in his body in front of this massive pressure. Taking a deep breath and stabilizing his body and staring at Yang Haoyu, Long Haochen did not wipe the blood on the corners of his mouth, and his look became even more calm than before. The light god domain once again retracting to an area of 10 meters diameter around him, Long Haochen took a deep breath, seemingly drawing all the light into his body. The 2 swords in his hand were slowly brought together above his head, and when the 2 divine swords flowed into each other, a terrible flash of white light surged out from them. Immediately, that white light turned multicolored, before turning into an incandescent white. The 2 swords' harmonious bond drew in a power that had initially even caused the demon god emperor to sigh in admiration. But this harmonious use of the 2 swords seemed to be only aiming at controlling his light god domain. A fantastic white luster surged out from the 2 swords that had been made one with the light god domain. At that time, Yang Haoyu had a look of shock for the first time, seeing the bearing of Long Haochen's light god domain change. Every domain had its own bearing. For instance, Yang Haoyu's star domain had a mysterious and inexhaustible bearing. But Long Haochen's light god domain's original bearing seemed boundless, a boundless light, purity, and gentleness. But right now, a fantastic change occurred on the light god domain's bearing. It turned white from a golden color, an incandescent color that returned to gentleness after an initial surge of brutal power, a vast aura of familiarity. That was life and creation. Right, when Long Haochen relied on the 2 swords' harmonious bond, it triggered a kind of evolution of his light god domain. The white domain was beaming with feelings of life and creation. This was the powerful aura of life and creation coming from the fusion between light and water, raising the natural qualities of the light DoD domain by 100-fold, and its bearing by 1,000-fold at once. Life and creation, a new mystery behind light god domain. Long Houchen's eyes similarly turned into an incandescent color, as he held the sword of life and creation in his hand, the light god domain extending once again immediately. Where it passed, the star domain was unable to resist, making a losing retreat little by little. With a wave of young Haoyu's right hand, this time 2 stars came flying at Long Houchen. If these 2 stars were to detonate, the resulting might was bound to increase by several-fold. White light circulated freely, as Long Houchen's light god domain suddenly slowed its spiraling speed. Surges after surges of light extended, immediately forming 2 bands in front of the 2 concentrations of starlight, slowly making way inside the 2 stos. Then young Haoyu immediately found out that he had lost control of his own domain. The starry sky explosion technique would immediately blow up upon contact with an opposing force, blowing at the core spot of the opponent's force. Triggering the explosion ahead of time was impossible, as at that time, the star was still located in its star domain, that would be akin to attacking himself. But when the star made contact with Long Houchen's light god domain, he unexpectedly lost control, becoming unable to explode it. In other words, Long Houchen had neutralized his starry sky explosion technique. This instant, young Haoyu's eyes were full of shock. He did not expect at all that Long Houchen's evolved domain would actually neutralize his domain technique like that. Long Houchen had a different cultivating orientation than Caia. Her method was more inclined to developing her domain technique, because what she inherited was the power of purification of the death god, hence her domain technique would to a large extent increase her offensive strength. After Long Houchen fused with Elux's constitution as a sign of light, his whole being was turned into a part of the light element. The mysteries of light did not relate to slaughters and battle, but with the creation and life brought by light. Because of finding out its true essence, Long Houchen chose this path for himself, the path leading to his domain's evolution. Right now, he was making use of the second form of the light god domain, its evolved form. Life and creations were inevitable and incidental concepts involved in everything. The fantastic changes and connection between these inevitable and incidental things caused the rise of a new ability exceeding the scope of light. 3. The starry sky explosion was certainly powerful and impossible for Long Houchen to block, but through his evolved light god domain, he had the ability to break off this power, and even cause the star domain to fall apart under the effects of the laws of life and creation. Young Haoyu knew that he had been underestimating this youngster. The latter's understanding of his own domain was perhaps not deep enough yet, but that was still an earth-shattering talent, whose knowledge of light vastly surpassed his own. And right now, this knowledge integrated his domain, thus causing it to complete an evolution. This video will end here.